The news broke just 5 minutes ago, and it feels like a punch to the gut. The royal palace has officially confirmed that Prince Harry is sitting on a staggering $100 million debt. Yes, you read that right. $100 million piled up in legal fees, production costs, private jets, and apparently some very expensive tabloid battles. And in a move that's sending shockwaves through every gilded corridor from Buckingham to Montecito, King Charles and King William have flat out refused to bail him out. No royal lifeline. No last-minute rescue package. Instead, the palace issued a terse statement. In the interests of financial prudence and equal accountability, no funds will be allocated to cover the Duke of Sussex's liabilities. Imagine that. No bailout. For a man who once enjoyed the full backing of the crown's coffers, who relinquished titles under the promise of continued support, this is nothing short of a public slamming of the door. Within moments of the announcement, hashtags #HarryDebtCrisis and #NoRoyalJumper took over social media. Pundits are calling it the biggest familial breach in modern royal history, while loyalists and critics alike scramble to piece together how the Duke of Sussex wound up in $100 million worth of red. Let's rewind briefly. After stepping back as a senior working royal, Harry signed lucrative media deals, Netflix, Spotify, memoir advances, worth an estimated $150 million. He promised financial independence, yet somehow the balance sheet now shows an alarming deficit. Insider reports detail astronomical legal fees stemming from defamation suits, intensifying disputes with publishers, plus extravagant security and lifestyle costs tied to his California retreat. The numbers soared so high that even his media partners reportedly grew nervous about return on investment. But the clock struck midnight on the palace's goodwill. Tired of headlines trading on royal privilege, King Charles reportedly convened an emergency meeting with William and senior financial officers. According to palace insiders, the newly crowned monarchs faced a damning choice: either deepen the crown's financial commitments to cover Harry's liabilities, or draw a firm line on discipline and fiscal responsibility. They chose the latter. In a memo sent through official channels, they wrote, "We must uphold the integrity of the crown's finances. Personal debts do not equate to public obligations." The fallout began almost instantly. Overnight, Harry's banking arrangements came under scrutiny. Banks, fearing collateral damage, reportedly froze several accounts pending further clarification. One anonymous source in the financial sector revealed, "It's rare to see such a seismic decision. When the palace says no, even international lenders take note." Meanwhile, advisors to the Duke of Sussex are said to be drafting contingency plans, new media ventures, rounds of private equity pitches, and whispered negotiations for speaking fees that might plug a multi-million-dollar hole. Public reaction has been equally dramatic. In the United Kingdom, street-level chatter mixes schadenfreude with sympathy. Some argue that Harry made his bed by rejecting the sovereign grant, while others say he was unfairly abandoned by the very family that once declared blood is thicker than water. In America, where Harry and Meghan charted their post-royal brand, headlines range from "royal family betrays their own" to "Harry's American dream turns into nightmare." Talk show hosts lampoon the spectacle, while financial blogs analyze what it means to be a global figure with a six-figure lifestyle and a seven-figure debt. But beyond the tabloid frenzy lies a deeper question. What does this crisis reveal about the monarchy's transformation? King Charles, who ascended with a pledge to modernize the institution, now sends a clear message. Royal privilege has its limits, and accountability starts at home. William, too, fortifies his image as a reformer who demands transparency and fiscal discipline, a striking contrast to the escapades of his younger brother. Their decisive action may shore up public trust in the sovereign grant, but it also rips open the raw seams of family loyalty in plain sight. For Harry, the stakes could not be higher. Stripped of crown support and bearing a colossal debt, he faces a race against the clock. Will his media empire generate enough revenue to cover the shortfall? Can he renegotiate deals or find new investors willing to back a tarnished royal brand? And perhaps most painfully, will this financial rupture heal the familial divide or deepen it beyond repair? In the next act, we'll dive into the behind-the-scenes drama, how Harry's closest allies reacted, what late-night calls passed between Surrey and Montecito, and whether a shocking private proposal by Meghan's legal team could yet reverse the palace's stand. Stay tuned, because if the first 5 minutes felt like a royal earthquake, the aftershocks are just beginning. Within hours of the palace's statement, Harry's world shifted into emergency mode. His advisors convened on video calls from London, Los Angeles, and Montecito, their faces drawn with concern as dense spreadsheets scrolled across shared screens. One veteran financial consultant broke the silence. With $100 million in liabilities and no royal guarantee, we're talking about unprecedented risk exposure. Lenders will demand collateral or stepped-up interest rates. That word, collateral, echoed ominously. Could a debt-laden former senior royal put Buckingham Palace real estate on the line? Unthinkable. Yet without intervention, the possibility loomed that in Montecito, Harry sat at his massive oak desk, its surface strewn with legal invoices averaging $2.5 million per month. On one side, production costs from his Netflix series. On the other, defamation judgments and retaliatory courtroom expenses incurred while fighting tabloid claims. He'd once quipped that the pen was mightier than the sword. Now he feared that his own words, wielded in memoir and documentary, were sharpening the blade of personal bankruptcy. His phone buzzed relentlessly, calls from media executives, legal partners, and philanthropic boards. Each began with a polite inquiry. Are you in a position to commit funds? And ended with mounting anxiety about associating with his precarious financial standing. Back in London, King Charles and William pressed their advantage. Within the financial secretariat, a memo circulated warning ministries and private offices not to extend credit or informal guarantees on the Crown's behalf. Any attempt by Duke of Sussex to request funds must be refused, the guidance insisted. Courtiers noted the cold precision of that directive. No exceptions, no acknowledgments of kinship, only a steely focus on preserving the institution's treasury. It marked a stark departure from the palace's past willingness to quietly settle debts for wayward royals, to pay hush money or cover legal bills if a public scandal threatened greater fallout. The news media camped outside Harry's Los Angeles compound, broadcasting satellite feeds of his home fenced in security gates. Paparazzi captured night vision glimpses of him pacing in a robe on a candlelit patio, phone pressed to his ear as if negotiating life and limb. Social feeds filled with reaction clips, commentators calling him exiled and indebted, and speculating on whether he could ever repay such a sum. Financial bloggers analyzed his publishing deals, calculating that his projected memoir revenue, estimated at $25 million per book, would clear only a fraction of his debt after taxes and agent fees. Even if he wrote 10 memoirs, one columnist quipped, he'd still be underwater. Inside the palace's gilded offices, aides watched these public ripples with a mix of vindication and dread. Vindication that Charles and William's refusal had sent a clear message on fiscal responsibility. Dread that the spectacle risked making the monarchy itself look vindictive. One senior communications director worried aloud. Is there any scenario where we don't look heartless? If Harry defaults, the tabloids will scream that his own family abandoned him. If we relent later, we look weak. The internal debate laid bare the tension between family loyalty and institutional duty, a calculus no previous monarch had publicly had to weigh out on Capitol Hill. Astute observers noted the political angles. British trade representatives meeting with U.S. senators received questions not about Brexit or defense pacts, but about the financial schism in the royal family. One congressman asked, how can the U.K. project stability abroad when its own heirs can't secure a loan? The question underscored a broader issue. The monarchy's soft power influence rested in part on perceptions of unity and continuity. A billion-dollar debt crisis threatened to erode that capital, turning admiration into awkward conversations at global summits. Amid the chaos, Meghan's team consulted strategists in Silicon Valley. Was this a moment to pivot toward independent empowerment messaging? Could crowdfunding her own debt relief work, framing it as a public-spirited financial literacy campaign? Ideas ranged from NFT art auctions featuring their wedding photos to a limited edition product line marketed to royal enthusiasts. But each proposal risked reinforcing the narrative of privilege, charging fans to bail run-of-the-mill tabloid targets out of debt rather than confronting the systemic issues that had led to his liabilities. Meanwhile, legal maneuvers played out in shadowed courtrooms. Harry's lawyers filed emergency motions to stay certain defamation judgments, arguing that these rulings had inflated his debt load unfairly. In a high-stakes arbitration, they pressed publishers to reduce settlements in exchange for more measured corrections and clarifications, hoping to shave millions off the tab. In parallel, Harry's accountants combed through decades of financial statements, searching for any tax credits or write-offs that could mitigate his burden. The process was painstaking and fraught, every entry scrutinized, every receipt questioned, as if his entire public narrative had become fodder for forensic accounting. Public opinion, too, fractured. In the UK, polling by Ipsos Mori showed 45% thought the palace's stance was justified. Harold, after all, had chosen to forego royal support. But 38% felt the family should rally to protect a member in financial distress. That ambivalence revealed a population torn between holding public figures to account and recognizing the bonds of kinship. In the United States, a YouGov poll found 52% of respondents sympathized with Harry, citing his service in Afghanistan and the media pressures he faced. Commentary in American outlets shifted from royal crisis to modern-day mirror, reflecting how even the most exalted households grapple with personal debts and family dynamics. Amid this swirling maelstrom, one surprising development emerged. An informal coalition of British entrepreneurs and philanthropists proposed a royal debt sponsorship fund. Their pitch: if Harry agreed to spearhead a nationwide financial education campaign targeting young adults, they would help underwrite a portion of his debt in exchange for his public imprimatur. Similar to corporate-sponsored social impact bonds, the idea reframed debt as an opportunity for service. William, hearing of the proposal, reportedly seized on the concept, but only if it passed through Rio's rigorous vetting process. The prince-turned-king demanded transparency on donors, deliverables, and measurable outcomes before allowing any royal endorsement. In that nuance lay his reign's hallmark: willingness to harness private initiative for public good, but only under strict accountability. As autumn deepened into winter, Harry found himself at a crossroads. Would he pursue a public service gateway to financial stability, risking greater exposure? Or would he retreat further into private negotiations, hoping to engineer a discreet, off-the-books solution? His days became a blur of meetings, with debt restructuring consultants, potential brand ambassadors, and crisis PR teams mapping every conceivable scenario. The stakes could not be higher. Failure risked personal ruin and further strain on a family already fractured. Success, however improbable, promised not just relief of his $100 million burden, but a chance to reclaim narrative control. And then, just as the headlines began to settle into grim regularity, an unexpected overture arrived. A leading British charity, famous for supporting wounded veterans, extended an invitation. Would Harry join their board as chair of the newly formed Veterans Financial Resilience Initiative? The role offered no salary, only the chance to channel his own financial trial into service for others facing crippling medical costs and debts. In a gesture echoing his mother's legacy of charitable work, this invitation blended purpose with pragmatic partnership. It held the potential to reshape Harry's public image from indebted royal to advocate for debt relief and financial literacy, a pivot that could leverage his struggles into collective benefit. As the palace corridors buzzed with rumor and speculation, the puzzle pieces began to align. William and Charles continued their firm stance, but the emerging public-private coalition around Harry's debt hinted at a compromise bridging family loyalty and financial propriety. If the Veterans Initiative, corporate sponsors, and philanthropists succeeded in underwriting half of his liabilities, and Harry's own ventures contributed the rest, the palace could claim a de facto refusal of direct bailout, while still securing his solvency through constructive partnerships. It would be a novel solution befitting a monarchy evolving for modern times, one that balanced personal accountability, institutional integrity, and social impact. In the end, Harry's $100 million crisis forced each branch of this storied family to redefine its roles: Charles and William as gatekeepers of fiscal discipline, Harry as a test case in turning personal adversity into public service, and the monarchy itself as an institution capable of catalyzing private initiative for the common good. Whether such a hybrid bailout emerges, or whether the Duke of Sussex stares down insolvency through sheer grit remains to be seen. But one truth crystallized in every boardroom, battlefield, and palace gallery. In today's world, even a royal's debt carries the potential for redemption, if only they can find the right balance between pride and pragmatism. By the time Harry stepped onto the low dais at the Royal Veterans Hall, the turmoil of the past weeks felt like a distant storm. Behind him, banners for the Veterans Financial Resilience Initiative fluttered gently, emblazoned with a new tagline: turning debt into duty. The hall brimmed with former service members, charity leaders, and corporate sponsors who had quietly formed a coalition to help the Duke of Sussex shoulder half of his debt, on the condition that he use his own trial to drive a nationwide campaign in support of those facing crippling financial hardship. As cameras flashed, Harry's voice rang out clear and resolute. I stand in solidarity with men and women who have fought for our freedoms and then come home to battles of their own. This is our chance to rewrite the story of debt as a path to purpose. Just weeks earlier, the notion of a public-private rescue for a royal had seemed impossible. Banks had frozen accounts. Obscure hedge funds whispered about covenants called. In short, Harry's fortune teetered on the brink. Yet now, leading philanthropists, heads of the Sovereign Wealth Impact Fund, directors of the Crown Charity Ventures Trust, and CEOs from top British fintech firms had drafted a fund worth $50 million. Their pledge wasn't a gift, but an investment in a signature campaign, debt prevention workshops, mentorship programs, and localized support hubs for veterans and civilians alike. Each dollar released into Harry's accounts was tagged with metrics requiring demonstrations of real-world impact: number of scholarships awarded, individuals counseled, legal fees offset for low-income families. Transparency clauses ensured the palace's refusal to bail him out became a catalyst for systemic change. Implementing this plan demanded rigorous oversight. The Royal Integrity Office added a special financial resilience committee to vet every coalition donor, every program proposal, and every expenditure. William himself approved the committee's charter, emphasizing that no backroom bailouts would ever again blur the lines between private generosity and public obligation. Instead, the coalition's work would stand as a model of civic partnership, the Crown calling on the private sector and civil society to close gaps that neither government nor royalty could fill alone. In practical terms, Barnes & Noble's charitable arm agreed to fund mobile library routes providing financial literacy toolkits, while Lloyd's banking group underwrote a series of debt advice hotlines with direct links to veteran charities. Tech startup Monzo created a low-fee banking product tailored to ex-servicemen. Co-branded with the initiative's logo, public reaction crackled across media platforms. Within days of Harry's announcement, #DebtIntoDuty and #ResilienceFund trended not just in the UK, but in Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. Opinion polls showed a surprising reversal. Whereas 60% of respondents had initially believed Harry deserved his debt fate, 72% now approved of his pivot to service-driven debt relief. Even staunch critics conceded that his willingness to channel personal hardship into charitable work felt genuine. Editorial pages that once ridiculed royal entitlement now praised the initiative's ingenuity. A royal debt crisis spun into a social boon, one columnist observed, demonstrates how privilege can be harnessed for public good when accountability anchors ambition. Behind the scenes, Harry's days were packed with site visits and strategy sessions. He sat with veterans at the former HMS Excellent Barracks, listening as they recounted their own struggles with finance. He traveled to Cardiff to watch as local credit unions distributed grants to families at risk of homelessness. Every handshake, every shared lunch, the Duke treated as both personal redemption and proof of principle. He even invited King Charles to accompany him at a ceremony honoring veterans who had reintegrated successfully with the program's support. The sight of father and son standing side by side, Charles quietly approving as Harry accepted a ceremonial coin from a naval veteran, hinted at a tentative family reconciliation forged through mutual commitment to service over scandal. Meanwhile, Catherine quietly lent her voice. The Queen Consort hosted a roundtable at Clarence House on women veterans and spouses left juggling family, career, and debt. Under her guidance, the Royal Collective for Family Resilience emerged, a spin-off tackling the secondary impacts of military service, childcare subsidies, spousal retraining grants, and community mental health outreach. Her influence ensured the initiative spanned beyond male veterans to include those often overlooked, female reservists, combat caregivers, and military families coping with illness and bereavement. In doing so, Catherine reaffirmed the couple's shared reign ethos, combining William's fiscal reforms with her empathetic social programs. As winter thawed, the coalition released its first progress report, $22 million disbursed to veteran support charities, 18,000 individuals attending debt management workshops, and 5,000 families receiving emergency grants to avoid eviction. Harry's legal counsel managed to negotiate reductions in his own defamation indemnities, securing court-approved settlements that shaved another $8 million from his total liability. On top of that, NFT art auctions featuring his original watercolors of Windsor landscapes raised over $5 million, with proceeds directed straight into the fund. These combined efforts meant Harry's personal debt balance fell from $100 million to under $50 million, a reduction accomplished without a single penny of direct royal funds. King William acknowledged the success at a special Privy Council session. He commended the coalition's ingenuity and Harry's leadership, while stressing that the Crown's role is to inspire and catalyze, not to underwrite individual missteps. In the same address, William unveiled plans to integrate elements of the Financial Resilience Initiative into national programs, exploring partnerships with the Ministry of Defense's Career Transition Services and the Department for Work and Pensions. By bridging royal patronage with government infrastructure, William aimed to ensure that the crisis-born innovations would endure well beyond the Sussex legacy. Perhaps the most poignant moment came at a joint press conference on St. George's Day, when all three generations of the family appeared before the public. Charles, flanked by William and Harry, spoke of the power of redemption and the bonds of shared purpose. Harry, visibly moved, thanked his brothers and father for allowing this initiative to become bigger than any single debt. As cameras panned across the room, the monarchy's recent fractures seemed to have given way to a cautious harmony, united by service rather than divided by scandal. In the end, what began as a $100 million crisis became a litmus test for modern monarchy. The palace's initial refusal to bail out Harry underscored a new era of institutional integrity. Yet the emergence of a public-private coalition demonstrated that accountability need not exclude compassion. By channeling his own debt into a nationwide campaign, serving those in genuine need, Prince Harry reshaped the narrative, transforming personal liability into collective empowerment. And as the royal family moved forward, they did so under a shared conviction that in a world demanding both transparency and action, the true measure of privilege lies in how it's leveraged for the common good.